Hello, guys, and welcome to the first inaugural episode of SC Fitness. I'm really happy to have you here. So, today we're going to be talking about nutrition and how to lose weight. So, this is kind of a free flow video. This is going where I just have a conversation, and it's more natural if it's free flow. So, the first thing we have to really understand is to be in a calorie deficit. That's how we lose weight. To be in a calorie deficit, that means we are burning off more calories than we are eating or consuming. And so that will make us lose weight. And what I first like to do is I first like to specify goals and then make some easy changes and then eventually go into a sustainable diet. That's the basic tip and end goal, is you don't want to be on a diet which feels like you're always going on a diet while kind of feeling restricted and feeling like you always have to eat boring foods, chicken, broccoli, rice, but we still want to make some decent progress. So what I like to do is see what your favorite foods is, try to make healthy versions of that, and limit the calories. You can eat some burgers where there are a lot less calories. You can have burgers with different buns. Experiment through with different buns, check the nutrition labels, and see how many calories there are. And do that with the other parts of burger. You can get a healthy burger instead of 1,000 calories or 700 calories. So that's basically a tip. You should try to make healthy versions of foods that still taste good. And basically, I would say I would recommend to have a sustainable diet. We want to lose about 1 pound a week. So that would be 500 calorie deficit. And so that will make you lose weight at a conservative rate. So basically we want to think about that. And we also want to track how many calories we burn. So we want to do a lot of cardio. I feel like going slower is actually proved to burn more calories, going slower over a long period of time than sprinting for 15 minutes. And so we want to maybe take a couple of walks, get in a lot of steps, 10,000 steps, and basically do a lot more cardio while still feeling like we're energized to do that cardio. And so I would say every day I would adjust. So for losing weight, people should adjust based on how they're feeling, the amount of calories or the amount of cardio they're doing. So if you kind of feel lethargic, out of energy always, you can increase the calories by a little bit to make sure you're feeling back to being energized. If you're feeling like you're eating too much, you can lower down the calories by a little bit. It's all an adjustment game. And so losing weight is a marathon, not a sprint. Just remember that. We want to make sustainable diets instead of doing all these crash diets, intermittent fasting, which can produce results for 2 weeks, but then you just binge eat, gain all the weight back, and it's a cycle. But the even worse thing is you're actually probably losing muscle while doing this. So basically, if you lose 15 pounds, you're losing 5 pounds of muscle, 5 pounds of fat, and 5 pounds of water. But once you gain all the weight back, you are actually gaining more water and more fat than muscle. So the muscle is kind of gone. And so that reduces your metabolism. So it makes it even harder to diet the next time. Of course, not by like an immense amount, but it still makes it a bit harder to diet the next time. And that cycle can continue if you go on unsustainable diets. So 500 calorie deficit is a pretty conservative rate, I feel like. And so next, I would enjoy what you eat. So I would create maybe like a circle diet. So where you have a couple of foods that taste good but are also healthy, then you have foods that are above your circle. So they're basically like unhealthy, but they taste really good. Make those foods healthier. Find ways which you can enjoy new foods to include. The biggest misconception about dieting is that we basically are removing foods instead of thinking about adding more variety and more foods that can go inside your circle. Like, even like, then you can think about foods that don't taste good. You can make them taste better. It's easier to do it that way. You can make them taste better, and so it's easier to consume. And once in a while, you can feel like having like a food like tofu. You might not feel like having tofu with vegetables and rice. You can make that taste better by adding sauces, spices, garlic powder, whatever you want that's not too high calories. I feel like, and basically, I feel like you should count calories. You should either have a daily log or something where some kind of tracking measure. And then so you can kind of count how many calories there are. But I feel like one of my tips that I would recommend is getting a scale for people who are beginners. Because then people who are beginners, once they have the scale, they can measure how much, they don't know like how many calories are in some stuff. So they can measure that better than what they would originally have. And so people sometimes mix this up. So they basically think they're eating something a lot lower in calories, but they're actually eating something a lot higher in calories. And so basically they say that calories in, calories out, being on a calorie deficit doesn't work for their body, and they try random fitness fads that don't work. It's just that they're either inaccurate with how many calories they're burning, or they are inaccurate with how many calories they're consuming. So you need to be accurate. I feel like the best way is getting the scale. But the second best way is reading the nutrition labels. But that can be a little tough because sometimes they don't lie, but they kind of like bend the rules. You can make estimations. You can do some stuff that can like lower the calorie count. Like there's some, you can bend a couple calories here and there. And so basically, like, it's not as accurate, I would say. So, in keeping a daily food log, some people think that's really like for fitness people who, at least this is my personal experience, some people really think like, oh, this is for people who just don't have a life and just go to the gym and do nothing else. But this is really not. A piece of evidence is that now schools are recommending that you keep a calorie log if you want. Like literally I've taken health courses and in school, and basically they're recommending to keep a daily log of calories for good nutrition. They're not recommending to over restrict or go on crash diets or doing stuff unsustainable, but they are recommending keeping a daily log. This is schools recommending it. It's not like a fitness geek just telling you, hey, just keep a food log. It's not like that. Alright, moving on to the next point. So, I feel like a lot of people like keep to count macros, You don't need to do that. If you want, you can keep macros, but I think it's okay just to keep the count of calories and be mindful about eating balanced meals. Like, usually you should have a good amount of fruits and vegetables. I would say a lot of your meal should be the fibers, and then you have a couple of starches and a decent amount of protein. So basically, you should have a balanced meal. And you can increase your protein intake by a little bit here, but you shouldn't be too over obsessive about eating protein. Unfortunately, that is what a lot of kids fall to. They basically hear people saying, "Oh, protein," like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, or like actors being like, "Oh, eat more protein, eat as much protein as you can." And really, that's not the healthiest way to go, as even the results, like once you eat so much protein, are so diminishing. And so I would just not overdose. Also, like artificial products, like we don't know how certain they are. I actually have had like people who've had bad experiences with artificial sweeteners. I would say really the dose makes the poison, or even like protein powder. They've had bad experiences. The dose makes the poison. You shouldn't get too obsessive about those things. If you want, you can have a scoop of protein powder or put in a couple of artificial sweeteners here and there, but you shouldn't have that be like your main thing, and you shouldn't get over obsessive about having artificial sweeteners. So that's basically like what my view is on that. And so now cheat days is another discussion point I want to talk about, because this is really big in nutrition. Sometimes it is okay to have a cheat day. So basically, there are a couple of tips you can follow for this. So, tip one is you can burn off a lot more calories. Like after a big marathon, or like, I'm not saying that many people who are like can go from not in very good shape to marathon, but like you can even go on an extremely long bike ride. If you go on an extremely long bike ride, it's okay for you to have more calories or have an occasional cheat day. Just you burn the calories so you earn that privilege. Or if you're planning to burn a lot more calories than normal. And so that's kind of my view. Also, if you know you're going to have a big dinner coming up and you're really busy and you don't have time to burn that many calories, what you can do is kind of compensate. So if you know you're having a big dinner, you have a bit later, like the meals can be a bit later than you usually used to, but then you can have less calories on your snack because your meal was heavy in the morning, or it's gonna be heavy at dinner. So you can think about that in a way that you can kind of do compensation. But I feel like some people have more trouble with this than others. Some people want more cheat meals than others, and I feel like that's really about how many calorie how much of a calorie deficit you are going into. If you are going into 1,000 calorie deficit, like that is like very advanced, and that is something that you'll have to have an immense amount of control with. If someone can handle that, the average person can't, but if someone can handle that, that's fine. They can go on that deficit, but it's just like there's some risks on that. But 500 is something that most people can sustain and feel happy from eating in a 500 calorie deficit. It's very good. 750 also. You need a bit more control on that, or you need to be a little bit more active. But I would say basically like try it out and see if you're feeling energized. And so now we go on to the topic of eating disorders. So eating disorders, I would say, do not like. It's horrible if you fall to that path, because that's when you get over obsessive and you start to really go down on your calories. Like anorexia, you basically don't eat much, and then bulimia, like you puke after that. It's really not good. You're at a normal weight at bulimia, but it's just like not a good feeling. Eating disorders are really bad, guys. If you guys search up like what is it to experience that, and there's a lot of embarrassment for eating disorders, unfortunately. If you know anyone who's gotten an eating disorder, there are probably some hotlines that you can call, and that's really a thing that we should avoid. We should never get too obsessive in that way. But unfortunately, some people can sound really extreme, even though it might not be their intention. Or even like some people, like even on TikTok fitness or like platforms where unfortunately information is uncensored, like Instagram. There can be like some places where it's uncensored, unfortunately, or fortunately, but in this case unfortunately. And so basically people can romanticize eating disorders, which is a path that you should never follow. Like the pain of regret is much more, the pain of going through the eating disorder is much more than just staying at a normal weight. There's nothing wrong with bettering yourself, but you should not go to extremes. Like also like genetics plays a huge factor in your metabolism. You can increase your metabolism, but like I wouldn't just expect quick results immediately. It might take time for your results, but people can get to a baseline where they look really good, and so genetics has a big role in that. So I feel like we should be sustainable. We should have realistic expectations. And then if we can have a possible like thing where we turn into a physique where it's really good, that's also really, really good. If you can turn your physique from something that you don't like to like a 10% body fat or something pretty good. That might not be healthy for a lot of people. That might be a little unrealistic to maintain for a lot of people, but there's some people who can maintain that. And that's really like great if you can. And if you cannot, try to work towards something. You can all get down to a body fat that we like. Like I believe that we can get to a certain level, but then genetics plays other factors, and then it's just about how do you feel. Like some people can get down to like 4% body fat, they're miserable. Some people can get to 8% body fat and they're just not feeling it. Then maybe like be where you're happy. So if you're like, if you've lost or gained like a couple of pounds, and like you care so much about the couple of pounds, like you have to know, are you happy where you are? Do you feel energized? Like life is much more important than just a few pounds here and there. And so really like valuing time and effort and valuing what you have is really a big point. Nutrition and fitness. Like a lot of people have gone through fat to fit to fat, and they felt like they've gotten an appreciation of what it's like to diet, and they've gotten more of an appreciation for life and how life doesn't matter on a few pounds here or there. And this is not saying that you cannot better yourself. It's good if you make yourself better. It's great if you can lose a few pounds. But if you do not feel happy doing that, why would you? And so that's kind of my take on nutrition, as you should eat low calorie dense foods. That's my final tip. Low calorie dense foods. Some foods like apples can be not many calories. Like you can eat 8 or 9 apples, 500 calories. So basically, you could eat like 4 apples or 3.5 for 200 calories, while you can only eat half a slice of cake for that. And like, there's some foods that like you can basically make into that can be in certain situations like healthy or not healthy or not like good for a certain goal that you're trying to achieve. Like nuts, after a big race, they're healthy and they're good. They're not the best source of protein, I would argue, but like they fill you up like calorie wise, not really like in like nutrition wise, but they kind of like fill up all the calories you burned from a long bike race if you're trying not to lose weight. And so like bulking up nuts is pretty good because it fills up like a lot of calories that you need. But I would recommend do not dirty bulk. Recommend bulking slowly so that like you do not add a lot of fat versus muscle. So you can like add more muscle in ratio to fat. And some people, it's just when you get bigger, you think you're getting bigger, but you think you're gaining more muscle, but actually you're just getting bigger. But anyway, that's a bit off topic. So the last point is low calorie dense foods. So there's some foods that you can actually have less calories, but more of it. Like there's some Kona ice, I know, is pretty healthy in terms of that. You can have a lot of Kona ice. 1 ounce is 42 calories. You might need a bit more of that for like a cup of that, but like having a couple of Kona ice cups, it is really good and it tastes really good and you should have it. It's delicious for the amount of calories, and that's something that you can really have. That's a low calorie dessert. You don't need to give up dessert. You can have a little taste of sugar if you want. And like fudge bars, I saw like fudge bars sometimes are like 100 calories and they're not that small. But like a kite ice cream cone that I saw could be 300 calories. You should look at the labels and really like get to the mindset that not all versions of foods are the same. Foods are not black and white. It's not like ice cream is horrible. It's not like you're putting stamps. Like nuts are good. You're not putting stamps on foods. And I feel like you can have low calorie options. Like whipped cream is another food that really like makes a lot of enjoyment and it's something that people like a lot. So like whipped cream really gives that enjoyment and a lot of people should have whipped cream as it's like really satisfying. This is just my thing. You can have low calorie whipped cream, still tastes as good. It's super satisfying to eat. And you could have whipped cream, low calorie whipped cream, and it still can taste delicious. So that's kind of my take that there's some foods that are not black and white. There's some foods like look at the serving size on labels, and other things you should look at the serving size to see because some companies might lie and they might say that their options are healthy. Sorry, that was weird. So some companies can lie and say that their options are healthy while they can be like really low, while they can look like they have low calories, they can have really small serving sizes listed in the back. So that's all. Just remember that you need to keep those tips, and if you need help, just email me at my email. And that's all. Thank you. Hope to see you in the next video.